Hello everybody, my name is Marsh, and welcome to this episode of Nostalgia Check, the show where we see if your favorite video games, TV shows, and childhood pastimes stand up to the test of time. Today we're going to be reviewing one of my favorite games of all time,
Resident Evil 4.
So, just to go over what we're going to cover today, I'm going to give you some background on why Resident Evil 4 is nostalgic towards me, what its release was like at the time that the game came out, then we'll hop into the game's story. Next will be my analysis of the gameplay, and then I'll give you the final verdict on if I think it stands up to the test of time, or if we're blinded by nostalgia and need to take off our nostalgia goggles. If you end up liking this video though, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, that'd be greatly appreciated, and if you wanted to share the video as well, that would help. Anyways though, let's go ahead and jump into the video.
Resident Evil 4.
So, Resident Evil 4. This is one of the most popular games of all time, but I didn't get to experience the hype of the game upon its first release. The game came out on January 11, 2005. Little old elementary school me was still playing movie tie-in games on my Game Boy at this time, because of course, I was the most cultured of first graders. I never even really knew what Resident Evil was at all until one day around I think 2007 when I went to one of my friends' houses. Now, growing up, me and my brother had a PS2, but we only really get one game a year, or whatever game is under $5 at Blockbusters when my parents were feeling generous. So going over to all of my friends' houses was a cathartic experience for me. When I went over to their houses, I was exposed to multiple video games and shows that I just didn't have access to because I was living in that boomer lifestyle on my Windows 97 computer with dial-up internet. And it just so happened one of these glorious days was when I was hanging out with my friend and they brought out a game on the GameCube called Resident Evil 4. And at this point my little prepubescent mind was stunned. You gotta understand here, I was an extreme scaredy cat as a kid. I would refuse to go into haunted houses and cry if they try to make me go into them. I remember seeing the orcs in the Twin Towers movie being birthed out of some fleshy earthy ball sack, and I screamed and ran into the next room. To be fair though, that's still scary as an adult now. Anyways, I would also cry at the Easter Bunny, and I also punched Santa as well. I was not accepting any stranger danger or anything scary near me at all. Yet, despite that, I think that something clicked in me that day. I was watching my friend play this game and he was shooting body parts, and the zombies, which I know aren't zombies, would react based on where he shot them. Up to this point, my only experience with any shooter game was the original Halo, when my cousins decided to bully me because I played like I had two left hands. For some weird reason though, I wasn't as scared as usual, and maybe this was just me wanting to impress my friend, but I sorta had a mindset shift where I said, I can beat this game. I can overcome it. I took it upon myself to conquer my fears and play through this horror game. So the next few months turned into me, every time we were at a video game store, begging my mom to get me Resident Evil 4. Because it was a mature game and I couldn't buy it myself. Luckily, at GameStop, the guy helped me out. I told her it's just a zombie game, nothing bad, and he let her know it's just a zombie game as well. And so she believed him, and just like that, I had my very first mature rated game ever, and my first horror game. And what a game it was. Like I mentioned before, I was a major scaredy cat, so this game took me months to get through. Now, for context, I was only allowed to play video games on the weekends, and also had to share with my brother, so basically I had the equivalent of one full day a week to play video games. Also, part of why it took me so long to beat the game though, was because I was terrified. Which is funny to say because Resident Evil 4 is when a lot of fans will start to say that it diverged away from horror. I remember there were two vivid points in the game though where I took 1 month break from playing because I was petrified. One was the Ashley section. I looked down that dark hallway and I literally just turned off my PS2, and I don't know, I went to eat a PB&J sandwich or something. The other point was when I encountered my first regenerator. I was also a dumb kid and didn't know you can use the thermal scope, so kinda made it super difficult, and it made me suffer through every single regenerator that popped up like it was a boss battle. Man, my incompetence with the game really made everything a mountain to climb. But once I beat the game, I was able to claim that as a victory, and man, did it feel good. Now, enough about my connection to the game. Obviously, you can see how attached I am to the game based off how long I've been rambling. let's go ahead and go over some stats and talk about the impact this game had when it came out. The game was released on January 11, 2005 on the GameCube and later on the PS2. It would then get famously released on every other console possibly known to man and released on whatever new version of that console came out as well. In total, Resident Evil 4 as of September 30th, 2021 has sold 11.2 million copies over multiple consoles. And that's not even including numbers from the Switch, Zeebo, iOS, and Android sales. Here's a little breakdown from a Reddit page I found because I sure as hell wasn't going to do my research myself because that's what the internet's for, am I right? The game has garnered so much attention that there is a remake that is set to hit the shelves in March of 2023. Which you can guess I am very, very excited for and also very skeptical as a huge fan. Now, when Resident Evil 4 was coming out, it had one of the most convoluted development stories of all time. There are thousands of YouTubers who can go into more depth about this better than I can, but basically Capcom really needed this game to be a hit or else the Resident Evil franchise was in big trouble. So the game itself has a long process. There was an earlier version of the game that was top down like the older games that was scrapped, and one rendition of the game turned into what we know as Devil May Cry. Finally, Capcom landed on the version we all know today as Resident Evil 4. But it wasn't a positive experience for all fans. I know from talking to the OG Resident Evil fans that there was a lot of disdain for this game when it first came out because it was less horror and there were too many action elements thrown into it. This caused many of the future Resident Evil games to be too action-oriented, so a lot of old-time fans disliked this game because of the way it changed the Resident Evil franchise for the worse. Despite this disdain though, even they find it hard to deny what a wonderful game this is. Hence the 11.2 million units sold and the 1 billion releases on different consoles. Like, come on, who even has a Zeebo? But it still has Resident Evil 4. Well, as you can see, it's easy to say that this game made an impact when it was released, but time for the main question. Does it actually deserve all of its hype? Or are we just blinded and need to remove our nostalgia goggles? Well, let's jump into the story and find out.
"1998. I'll never forget it. It was the year when those grisly murders occurred in the Arklay Mountains. Soon after, the news was out to the whole world, revealing that it was the fault of a secret viral experiment conducted by the international pharmaceutical enterprise, Umbrella. The virus broke out in a nearby mountain community, Raccoon City, and hit the peaceful little town with a devastating blow crippling its very foundation. Not taking any chances, the President of the United States ordered a contingency plan to sterilize Raccoon City. With the whole affair gone public, the United States government issued an indefinite suspension of business decree to Umbrella. Soon its stock prices crashed, and for all intents and purposes, Umbrella was finished. Six years have passed since that horrendous incident.
Now, the story of Resident Evil 4 starts out with Leon S. Kennedy riding in a car in some random Spanish village. His mission is to infiltrate the area and to save the president's daughter. Very B-action movie, I know. Essentially, what the character will experience is all the wacky hijinks and secrets that are happening here in this village and how it affects the kidnapping of Ashley Graham, the president's daughter, and how the things happening here could affect the world as a whole. After we get a little text monologue of Leon explaining all of this and our driver peeing on the side of the road, Leon is dropped off at this house and he goes in to start his investigation into finding Ashley. Before that, however, we get introduced to essentially our helper for the game, Ingrid Hunnigan. Kinda crazy to think that they had FaceTime going back in 2004 between Leon and Hunnigan. Anyways, after Hunnigan debriefs Leon, he goes into the house and asks one of the local villagers if he has seen Ashley. Then he is attacked by the villager with an axe. After we kill the villager, this is where we realize something is off about this place. We then hear some racket outside and our drivers drive off in a panic. We then go off on our own and save a doggo from a bear trap. And if you're one of those people that refuses to save the dog, honestly, what's wrong with you? Anyways, we then reach the beginning sequence of the game known as the village. We see that one of our drivers has been killed and burned at the stake. Here starts one of the most frustrating, tense, and difficult opening sequences in all video games. Not only are we attacked by endless hordes of villagers, but we are introduced to the famous Chainsaw Man, technically known as Dr. Salvador. If this dude didn't make you piss your pants as a kid, then I guess you just have good control over your bladder and I don't. After running around for a set amount of time, the church bells eventually ring, and we get this beautiful intro line by Leon.
Es hora de rezar. Tenemos que irnos. Lord Sattler.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Literally one of the best openings of any game ever. Our job now is to continue investigating this village and try to find Ashley. So when it comes to Resident Evil 4, there's an obvious main story given, but there are also these files you will find throughout the game. These are good if you want to fill in the backstory on what is going on. From this point on in the video, we will talk about each set piece pretty quickly, and I'll focus some more time on the more interesting bits as we go. We follow the trail at the end of the village and stumble upon a barnyard. We continue to kill more ganados and pick up treasures along the way. After the barnyard, we pull our best Indiana Jones and get introduced into one of our first QuickTime events in the game. And one of the many QuickTime events that will eventually lead to me getting carpal tunnel in my wrist. After dodging a big rock, we fight some guys with dynamite sticks, which, first off, why do random villagers have dynamite? After that though, we go into a house and we meet another famous character, Luis.
Little rough, don't you think? You're not like them?
No. You?
Okay, I have only one very important question. You got a smoke?
Got gum.
Perfect. The big cheese.
What?
Not the most flattering of intros, but this was also a good introduction to our first boss enemy, the Big Cheese. After getting our ass kicked by the Big Cheese, that is the end of Chapter 1. We then get a creepy cutscene where we see Sadler, the main big bad, infect Leon with the Las Plagas virus. We wake up tied to Luis, and this villager comes into the room to kill us, but due to his incompetence, we survive and are set free. Luis runs away, and then we go down a hallway and are introduced to an absolute icon known as the Merchant. He will be our main dude that sells us supplies and weapons. We then go through an action set piece on a bunch of suspension bridges over a cliffside. Then we go through some creepy factory, once again killing multiple ganados, and we also get to hunt some little fishies. We then continue on our way, solve a puzzle, and gain entry to the Big Cheese's house, where he almost chokes us to death for trespassing, and he tells us basically that we have been infected, and that is the end of Chapter 2. At the start of Chapter 3, Hunnigan calls us and tells us that the village is being run by a cult group called the Los Illuminados. As a little Easter egg as well, if you go back into the hallway we came from, the Big Cheese tries to kill us, and we are saved by a mysterious lady in red. After that, we leave the house and have to fight another chainsaw man. Do you think the village has multiple chainsaws, or do they just recycle the ones from the chainsaw guys that we killed? Anyways, after killing him, we end up back in the village we started in. However, we picked up a key on our adventures and can now enter the creepy doorway with the cult symbol on it. This leads us into an underground tunnel where we meet our merchant friend again somehow, and after making our way through this tunnel, we get to the church. After getting to the church, the doors are locked, so now we have to find a way to gain access. We continue on our way through some weird wooden gate, and then end up at a swamp. Once more, another pattern per usual with the game. We will fight through a bunch of ganados and make our way through the swamp. We then end up at what is known as the lake. Here there's a little Easter egg where if you kill 5 fish, you get a secret weapon that makes the game super easy. And if you actually believe that, well, you then fell for the same joke that I fell for as a kid, and you watch the big fishy come out to eat you. Anyways, we look out on the lake and watch the lake monster eat a villager. Of course, we now have to cross this lake. In an attempt to cross the lake, we start to fight the lake monster with our endless supply of harpoons, and after almost being eaten multiple times, we finally defeat it. After defeating it, we make our way to shore, and Leon starts to have a heart attack, I guess, and falls unconscious in this building, and that concludes Chapter 3. Chapter 3 starts off with us seeing the toll that the infection is taking on Leon, and we wake up in pain. Time has passed, and it is now night. We walk outside, and are introduced to the shtick of the game, the Las Plagas. Basically, all the villagers have been infected with this virus that controls their minds, and for some of them, it transforms their bodies into these weird parasite equivalent monsters. I wonder if the creator of the game found inspiration from the Parasite manga, looking at the resemblance that the Las Plagas has to the manga. Anyways, we fight through a bunch of ganados again, and eventually we get back to the weird wooden gates and get introduced to El Gigante, one of the harder enemies we will fight throughout the game.
¡Rápido! 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 ¡Carla! ¡Usa los músculos! ¡Rápido! ¡Apúrense! ¡Por aquí! ¡Rápido! ¡Rápido! ¡Por aquí! ¡Por aquí! ¡Ay! ¡Se vuelve loco! ¡Mierda!
At least for this first encounter, I remember dying multiple times as a child because the intimidation of fighting a literal giant was so hard to overcome for me. Plus, I didn't know you can jump up and slice him up super easy, so instead I just shot him in the face nonstop for an hour. Going back to the beginning of the game though, if you decided to have a heart and save the doggo, he will come back to assist you in fighting El Gigante. You defeat El Gigante, and then you move on to the next area, where you then encounter some Doggo Las Plagas. After dispatching them, we finally make it back to the church and are able to gain entry into it. Here we finally get introduced to the bane of my existence, Ashley. Now it is our job to get to the extraction point Hunnigan told us about with Ashley and escape this village. However, we run into a few complications along the way. The first complication is when we get introduced to the true mastermind behind the cult, Osmond Saddler. He gives us a villainous monologue of his whole plan, of course, and we learn that he infected Ashley to then have her sent back to the United States to infect the president. Now, this is kinda dumb if you think about it, because if he let us escape, he would have succeeded, but I guess he wanted to take advantage of Ashley first and use her for ransom money. Anyways, now that we are both infected, our objective has now changed to finding a cure for both of us, and then we can escape. We then get attacked and jump out of a window Cowboy Bebop style and must now try to escape the onslaught of villagers coming to capture Ashley and kill Leon. Now from this point on, we have to escort Ashley, and many people hate this because of course escort missions in games are the worst. But to be honest, she isn't that hard to take care of. A majority of the time you can have her hide in dumpsters and then you don't even need to worry about her presence. Anyways, we make it back through the tunnel, go back to the village, go back to the barnyard, and take a different path we have not been on yet. On this different path, we get chased into a house by multiple villagers and get reintroduced to Luis, who takes an inappropriate liking to Ashley.
Leon! Small world, eh? Well, I see that the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics, too.
How rude! And I don't believe there's any relevance with my figure and my standing. Who are you?
Oh, excuse me, Your Highness. Perhaps the young lady might want to introduce herself first before asking someone his name.
Her name's Ashley Graham, the president's daughter.
Is she... well, you know...
Don't worry. She's cool.
Never mind. There's supposed to be some kind of obvious symptom before you turn into one of them anyway.
Look!
Ashley, upstairs!
Okay, it's game time.
After that, we then have one of the most iconic fights in the game, the house fight. Our job now is to survive long enough in this tiny cramped household until the villagers either leave or all die. The way we came from, however, has been destroyed, so we have to keep moving forward. Luis leaves us mysteriously, and we now have to decide between two paths. Either the right path, which has an El Gigante, or the left path where we have the twin chainsaw sisters. The right path is easier in my humble opinion, so we'll go that way. But of course, for completionist's sake, we will do both paths, but that's besides the point. At the end of the path, we find a gateway that is locked and a gondola. Not being able to go through the gate, we fight our way down the gondola and end up at a mysterious shed. We go into the shed, and now the boss battle between us and the Big Cheese commences. However, he didn't realize one thing. I am lactose intolerant, bitch. I mean, not really, but wouldn't it be funny if Leon said that? Anyways, we fight the Big Cheese and the shed catches on fire, and he separates into a weird centipede thing, and then we eventually kill him. After killing him, we extract his eye and go back to the gateway that was at the entrance to the gondolas. We use his eye to gain entry to the gateway and then head down another path where a rogue trucker tries to kill us, and then we are forced to run into a creepy castle and raise the drawbridge because, of course, apparently, the creepy castle is a better option than fighting the ill-equipped villagers. Anyways, now we are in Transylvania, and we get visited by a cheeky little merchant again and upgrade some guns, and now we need to find both a way out and a cure for the disease. Before we can enter the main part of the castle, we get a warm welcome from some creepy cult members mumbling whatever this means. Then we start getting shot at by catapults within castle walls, and then have to use a cannon to blow up a gateway to proceed. These cult members have also been an upgrade from the villagers because now they have helmets and can chuck scythes at us. After going through the gateway that we blew up, we now enter the interior of the castle where we have to do a tiny puzzle and swap 2 swords onto the wall. The interesting part is we also see an alternate mutation on the Las Plagas, and these ones, instead of slicing and dicing, just try to munch on your head instead. We move on from that room and we encounter our Spanish friend Luis once more. He tells us about the drugs he has that would help stop Leon and Ashley's convulsions, but he has misplaced them. He then goes off on his own to find it again and help them. Small note, I love this line by Luis when Leon asks him why he is helping them.
Look, I know you're carriers. You've been coughing up blood, right?
Yeah.
And you?
Yes.
Damn it! The eggs have hatched. We don't have much time.
What are you talking about?
I have to go back and get it.
Let me come with you.
No, you stay here with Leon. He is better with the ladies, I'm sure.
Why are you...
It makes me feel better. Let's just leave it at that.
It makes me feel better. Let's just leave it at that. Now, throughout the game, if you haven't been picking up the notes that you can find, this line won't mean as much to you. But if you have been reading all of the notes, you learn that Luis is actually responsible for helping to cultivate the virus. So him trying to help them is essentially him trying to cope with his guilt and make up for what he took part in. Okay, now back to our regularly planned programming. We go down a separate alleyway, fight more cult priest dudes, and get a key to the main castle gate. We go back to the gate and now gain entrance to the main hall of the castle, where we get introduced to a half-pint Napoleon, Ramon Salazar, who has a creepy laugh. And anyways, check out this creep.
I was starting to wonder when you might notice us.
Who are you?
Me llamo Ramon Salazar, the 8th Castellan of this magnificent architecture. I have been honored with the prodigious power from the great Lord Sadler. I've been expecting you, my brethrens.
No thanks, bro.
My, we've got a feisty one. If you care for your own well-being, I suggest you surrender yourself and simply become our hostage. Or Mr. Scott, you can give us the girl because you're not worth a penny, I'm afraid. You can die.
I'm never turning into one of them. Never.
Got that right. We'll find a cure.
After that introduction, we now have to find a few wall pieces to put in place to proceed, and we are soon going to encounter one of the most iconic rooms in the game. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we do that, we also encounter one of the new enemy types, the Garrador. This Wolverine wannabe is tempted by sound and will run towards whatever he hears. After we kill the Garrador, we go to the room with 2 flaming horse heads, dodge some TNT, and enter the infamous water room. Now, the water room is famous for being one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult rooms in Resident Evil 4. Everyone usually tackles it in a different way, but I'll go through what I usually do. First things first, let's snipe this dude's head off and kill his Las Plaga, run around the enemies and go downstairs into the little room and have both Leon and Ashley wait on the panels. This brings up the lever we have to turn, and I then like to camp in this room for a little bit, and after a while we will run back out to clear the enemies. Oh, also we have a sweet suplex now. Next we'll run out of the room, turn the lever, and then we get to another fun part. We have to defend Ashley, who has to go onto 2 platforms and turn some levers, and the whole time we need to protect both her and ourselves from being killed. After doing that successfully, 2 platforms in the water will rise up. We can go grab Ashley and run to the next room. Now, if I made that seem simple, it is not. I died at least twice doing this, and many other players have suffered this same fate. We now enter a new area in the castle and have to continue on our way. Now, if you are up to it, in the castle there are 3 little target range rooms that you can go into and win some little bottle cap statues that talk to you. After the detour, we go on our way, and Ashley decides to be a dumbass, and well, see for yourself.
You alright?
I'm fine! Leave me alone!
Ashley, wait!
Ashley!
What's going on? Ah!
Don't worry, Ashley. I'm coming for you.
As you can see, she gets captured again, like an idiot, and now we have to try to save her butt. Another interesting thing as well is the times that we try to talk to Hunnigan, the enemies have now jacked the line, and will give us some motivation as we go throughout the game. We move on though after Ashley is captured, and now we must traverse our way through the creepy sewer where we encounter a new enemy type, the Novistadors. To be honest, just get a shotgun out for these ones. They are just too much of a hassle to fight with anything else. We fight on through the sewers and end up in a weird sewer dungeon and continue to fight more and more bugs until they are all dead. After finishing traversing the sewer, we end up back in the room we were at, but now there is a party going on that we decide to crash. Anyways, after that little shindig, we move on and end up in the interesting hellhole where we have to fight multiple cult members in a little room. One of them obviously having a key, and sadly I didn't get footage of it because I killed him quickly, but at one point they bring out a giant ass turret to try killing you. With that key from the red guy, we go into the next room and run into our little friend again.
What a pleasant surprise. But I'm afraid it's Ashley we need. Not you, Mr. Kennedy.
If you don't need me, then get off my back, old man.
Did you say old man, Mr. Kennedy? It might come as a surprise, but I'm only 20 years old.
So you're just like all the others? A puppet of the parasites?
Surely you don't think I'm the same as those diminutive ganados. The parasites, las plagas, are slaves to my will. I have absolute control.
Well, I really don't give a damn. Rain or shine, you're going down.
Get rid of our American friend.
We also learn as well that Salazar is only 20 years old, which is gross. That's obviously caused by 200 generations of inbreeding, which makes him look like that. After he retreats though, we now have another fun little action sequence to go through where we also get introduced to freaking rocket launcher cultists. Yes, you heard me right. Rocket launcher cultists. After dispatching those guys, we move to the next section where we can finally see the outside world again through these windows that of course I decided to break. Next we end up in an ancient Greek labyrinth where we have to fight the Minotaur, but instead of the Minotaur it's just a puppy, and instead of a normal puppy it's an infected dog that is trying to tear off our face. But it's still a good doggo, it's just merely doing its job. So we go through the maze and get some puzzle pieces, unlock another gate, and then we get greeted by a familiar face that saved us earlier in the village. But Leon is unaware of that.
Put your hands where I can see them.
Sorry, but following a lady's lead just isn't my style.
Put them up now.
Bit of advice, try using knives next time. Works better for close encounters.
Leon. Long time no see.
Ada. So it is true.
True? About what?
You, working with Wesker.
I see you've been doing your homework.
Why, Ada?
What's it to you?
Why are you here? Why'd you show up like this?
See you around.
Ada!
Man, I think I got my first childhood crush after getting introduced to Ada. After learning she has her own motives and is working for Wesker, she dips and we continue on our way to try to save Ashley. We then enter a beautiful dining hall where Leon destroys a vintage, insert expensive wine name here, and a new room where we are then booby-trapped into fighting a Gyarados. After beating the Gyarados that definitely did not kill me, we go to the next room where once more we kill a crap load of enemies and then also get a free rocket launcher, which is super duper nice. Unfortunately, when we enter the next room we encounter Luis again, and I will let you watch.
Leon! I got it.
Louis!
Now that I have the sample, you serve me no purpose.
Sadler!
My boy Salazar will make sure you follow the same fate.
Stay with me, Louis. I am a researcher, hired by Sadler. He found out what I was up to.
Don't talk.
Here. It should suppress growth of the parasite. The sample. Sadler took it. You have to get it back.
Louis! Louis!
I always found it funny that Luis's last memory will be of some foreign white guy yelling his name incorrectly after hearing it multiple times the correct way. After getting the pills though, we then find Ashley ensnared, and we free her but also need to once more defend her from an oncoming onslaught of enemies. Eventually she gets away and then we get to play as her. Like I mentioned earlier, this was the first part in the game where I quit and had to come back later to complete it. So we are now playing as Ashley and her only power is to throw lamps. We go down this totally creepy hall and then we have to do the stupidest puzzle ever. Now I know it's a simple puzzle, but my child brain spent a good 30 minutes moving around tiles. Anyways, she gets the key, dodges some crazy creepy night dudes, and reunites with Leon. Now that we are back with Ashley, we have to find a way to cure ourselves before escaping. Oh, and also we ended up collecting the wall pieces we needed from earlier and now gained access to the next area of the castle. So now we have to ride the trolley and then actually fight the knights instead of running away and dodging them. And after that, we now have to go through Ramon Salazar's House of Horrors. Let's see, we have the creepy drill room, the creepy lava room with dragons, and the collapsing roof with spikes. After all that, we continue on our way again and fight these dudes in the hallway, and they enter this weird looking cave place where of course Ashley gets captured again. At least we don't have to look after her now, but we do need to fight these stupid bugs again. After killing the bugs, we now have to try saving her. We continue on and end up outside. Talk trash to Salazar a bit, and then we have to go to this weird clockwork-like tower. In the tower, we shoot some wood to get the gears moving again, and this gives us a way across the bridge. Of course, don't forget we have to murder a lot of people the whole time we are doing this. After entering the doorway, we have to fight a few enemies and 2 Garradors, which we make easy work of with a rocket. In the next following room, we see Ashley being held at spare point, and we run on the nice square tile in the middle of the floor where Salazar springs a trap for us where we barely live and then decide to blow out his eardrums.
Where's the satisfying sound of one's impalement?
Don't fall for this old trick.
Now we have to survive the depths and fight Salazar's right hand. And I don't even want to think about what Salazar does with his hand. Now you want to use these freezy tanks to kill them, but if you just want to make it easy after freezing him, use the handy dandy rocket launcher. After running through the sewers and killing Salazar's right hand, we get through the elevator. We then get a cutscene where we get introduced to Krauser, who is working for Osmond Saddler. After that cutscene, we arrive at our new destination in the bottom of a mine shaft somewhere. In this mine shaft, we get greeted by villagers again, and they are little TNT happy. Oh, and I guess Chainsaw Man was missing us, so we get to say hi to him a few times in these next few parts. Anyways, we get to this weird room, blow up a rock in our way, and kill a bunch of enemies and move to the next area. We end up in this weird lava room where because 2 is always better than 1, we have to fight 2 El Gigantes at the same time. Difference now being one of them is really into BDSM. After disposing of those 2 little rats, we continue on our merry adventure to save Ashley. We end up back in this cave area where we have to hear the non-stop annoying noise of bugs. Also in this cave, we have to turn on a bunch of lights until we can get the gateway open. Once it opens up, we go through and have to dodge some weird dropping weights and then end up at some weird coffin that takes us up to the surface. Once on the surface, we are now in a little village of sorts with some shacks, and we kill the local ganados and need to get through the pretty lion head door, but it's locked, so we find a secret tunnel and go down that.
Yeah, I forget the next couple lines, but then it goes, Secret tunnel, through the mountains, secret tunnel, yeah!
Under that tunnel, everything basically looks like a desert, and it looks like we got teleported into the Mummy movie. We fight our great chainsaw friends, more villagers, and continue on our way once more. We then get to the famous train car fighting scene, and it ends up with us getting the ability to jump 40 feet through the air, grab one-handed onto a ledge, and magically pull ourselves up. We then find the piece we need to get through the lion door, and we enter the next area. Now, if you didn't think Salazar was already full of himself, this dude literally built a 200-foot tall statue of himself that we have to parkour through, and then after doing that, we finally get to the next area where the statue decides to then chase us, and Leon shows off his new jumping superpower once more. After that interesting scenario, we run into our little friend again, and now we show him who is boss. Just watch.
So nice you could join us, Mr. Scott Kennedy.
You again.
The sacred rite that's about to begin at this tower shall endow the girl with magnificent power. She will join us, become one of us.
This is no ritual. It's terrorism.
Isn't that a popular word these days? Not to worry. We've prepared a special ritual for you.
That was always so cool. Okay, now we have to climb this hellhole of a tower where we have to start out by dodging barrels like Mario and Donkey Kong. Once we get to the top where the barrels are no longer a threat, we have to ride the open elevator where we have to survive waves and waves of enemies until we reach our destination. At the top, make sure to save because in the next room we finally get to confront Salazar in his true form. Good thing we bought a little explosive friend before going in to fight Salazar.
Just missed her. The ritual is over. She left with my men to an island.
What?
I think it's time I paid my due respects towards your impressive and stubborn will. Mr. Kennedy, welcome.
Monsters. Guess after this, there'll be one less to worry about.
After killing Salazar, we will learn that Ashley has now been taken to an island. Continuing our lifelong chase of this girl, we hitch a ride with an old mysterious friend and make our way over to the island.
Need a ride, handsome?
Okay.
Once on the island, we get a call from Sadler where he trash talks us and we trash talk back. Now at this point of the game, this is where the combat turns super action oriented and is less horror filled aside from a few certain moments. We will go through the events starting now. We keep moving forward and end up at a base, fight multiple new enemy types that are all suited with military equipment. We see a new enemy mini-boss that has a minigun, but we make easy work of him. We go and move these lasers to point at a doorway, and once it unlocks the doors, we go through them. In this next area, we are supposed to dodge another rock, but I failed as you can see, but second time's the charm. Well, no, third time is the charm, but you get the point. After dodging the rock, we fight through a few more hordes of enemies, including one carrying electric batons wearing prison jumpsuits. We finally reach the end of this area and go through the door. We end up inside some factory, I guess, or more like a factory that's surrounding a laboratory. After killing a few goons, we gain access to the lab, which is bigger than you may think. After making some progress through the area, we start to hear Ashley yelling for us non-stop.
Help me, Leon! Help!
Let's be honest here, how much stamina do her lungs have to be yelling like this non-stop for who knows how long? We eventually end up in a security room that has monitors viewing her prison cell where she is being kept, and somehow the soldiers know we are watching them and turn off the cameras. We end up in this one area where we start to play peekaboo with some enemies, and after killing our new friends because they were not very friendly, we keep going on to save Ashley. Now we end up in the scariest part of the island, the labs. But since I was already calling it that, these are the cold labs due to the temperature, I guess. Here we encounter a weird scene in a room where we see our first regenerator lying on a table. Now, as a kid, like I mentioned before, these things terrified me so much. I literally turned off my game and didn't come back to it for a few weeks. Luckily, if we continue exploring the labs, we get a thermal scope that makes these enemies much easier to kill. Once more, as a kid, I was never the type to explore what wasn't necessary, so I didn't find the scope or use it at all, making my life 100 times more difficult. But adult brain me isn't so dumb anymore. After killing the regenerators, we get into a weird garbage chute room where we get to play the Claw.
Who's in charge here?
The Claw is our master. Claw chooses who will go and who will stay.
This is ludicrous.
After having some fun with the Claw, we keep trucking along, and really all the next rooms are just more enemies, on top of enemies, whether it's in a lab or in a hallway. Eventually we do see our first Iron Maiden, which is a regenerator with spikes that protrude from their body. We kill this dude and get the shiny card key off his body, and then we go back to the room where we can use said card key. Before doing that though, we take an elevator up to a guard tower, use the radio to request backup on the island where our signal is jammed and we get no response. We then go back to the labs and eventually find Ashley, where we see the most convenient paper airplane fly in through the window from our friend Ada, and lets us know that we can escape through the disposal waste vents. Eventually we get there, and with some persuasion by Leon, we jump down the vents with Ashley. Now we have to get out of this area while also trying to find a way for us to cure ourselves before escaping. In the waste vents we run into more Iron Maidens and make easy work of them. We then push this metal box and go through the door for the next area. We kill some enemies and soon end up in another difficult situation where we are in some random lava room with a swinging chain that we need to activate to keep breaking the wall. This part's not that fun. My advice is just to keep running in circles and using a shotgun to clear the way. Eventually though, we get the ball to break through the wall and run away from that area. We then do some team building exercises, kill a few more regenerators, and end up at the next infamous action set piece, the dump truck. Ashley drives the dump truck for us while we stay in the back and make sure no one runs into her. Everything's going well, to be honest, until she crashes us into a wall trying to avoid another truck that is coming head on at us. Luckily, we survive the crash and hear that sweet music of the typewriter room. We then continue on our journey and we see Sadler showing his powers by controlling both Leon and Ashley and kidnapping Ashley once more by controlling her mind. For some reason, he doesn't kill us and leaves us alive. Before Ashley goes, though, we're able to sneak a GPS tracker onto her and see where he takes her. We then get treated to another cutscene with my crush Ada and Krauser talking, where we learn that both of them are working for Wesker. The next area we go to I like to call the factory. We will make our way through it, killing hordes and hordes of enemies until eventually we get greeted by Krauser for the first time and have a super cool knife fight where Ada saves our life. We also learn a bit about Leon and Krauser, and that Krauser was the one that kidnapped Ashley. We also learned that both him and Leon used to be partners.
Been a long time, comrade.
Krauser.
I died in a crash 2 years ago. Is that what they told you?
You're the one who kidnapped Ashley.
You catch on quick, as expected. After all, you and I both know where we come from.
What do you want?
The sample Sadler developed, that's all.
Leave Ashley out of this!
Oh, I needed her to buy Sadler's trust in me. Like you, I'm American.
You got her involved just for that?
All for Umbrella's sake.
Umbrella?
Almost let it slip. Enough talk. Die, comrade!
Ada!
Well, if it isn't the bitch in the red dress.
Looks like we have the upper hand here.
You may be able to prolong your life, but it's not like you can escape your inevitable death, is it?
You knew each other?
More or less. Maybe it's about time you told me the reason why you're here.
Maybe some other time.
After that sick knife fight, we continue on our way and do our best James Bond, dodge a million lasers coming at us, and we get through the laser room and we enter this cool throne room where we get to sit on a chair like a king. Behind the chair, however, is the entrance to the next area, and thus we must move on. We end up in an underground area of the island where we see that Ashley's track rest fallen off of her. Then we get ambushed by this weird experiment and have to fight him. We run around these suspended metal boxes, dropping them one by one until we end up on solid ground, where we finish off this rap. After killing him, we continue down the path and end up on the outside of the island again, in the middle of what seems to be a military encampment. We go into one of the tents and jump down into another underground railroad system, until eventually we end up outside again and in these weird ancient ruins where we encounter Krauser again, and this time we have to fight him. Here Krauser reveals his mutation with the Las Plagas, which is so cool. It's like some weird Sephiroth metal winged blade.
Witness the power!
We run around trying to survive Krauser's attacks and collecting puzzle pieces so that we can get through the locked doorway. A cool thing about Krauser is he's actually weak to knives, which is a throwback to our knife fight we had. After getting the first two puzzle pieces, we now need to kill Krauser in a specific amount of time before the area we are in blows up. We end up killing him and get the last puzzle piece and get through the doorway. The next area, however, is a huge military base that looks impossible to get through until we get help from our friend, Chopper Mike. This dude collapses a water tower and wreaks havoc on all of the soldiers for us. We fight through the military base with the help of Mike, but sadly all good things must come to an end, and our friend Chopper Mike gets blown up with an RPG.
Thanks. When we get out of here, drinks are on me.
Yeah, hey, I know a good bar.
Mike!
The mission can't end though, so we continue on our way to save Ashley. We end up in this room with Ada where the infection is getting serious now, and we almost choke her to death until she stabs us. After that encounter with her, it's obvious that we have to kill the parasite as soon as possible. We continue on our way to make it through the abandoned prison where we kill another regenerator, and then after that we end up outside again. We have another scene we have to go through now where we have to fight hordes and hordes of enemies, and after all that killing is done, we finally get to a room where we find Ashley. She is currently in a big cryogenic tube thing, and soon Sadler shows up and confronts us.
Awesome power. Yet it seems you would rather choose death.
I'm taking Ashley back, whether you like it or not.
Ah, the audacity of youth.
Leon, now!
go!
We leave Ada to fight Sadler and make our way back to the labs, where we find a machine that can cure both of us. After killing both of the parasites, it's now time for us to make our escape off this stupid island. Before doing so, we do have to have our final showdown with the big bad Osmond Sadler. When we encounter him, we see that he has Ada captured. We free Ada, and then he transforms into his true form, which is some weird head spider thing that has his body dangling from him.
Ada, stand back.
To kill him, we have to shoot the little eyeballs on his kneecaps and stab him in the face. This is a super well designed fight where if you are smart, you can use all of your surroundings to help you kill him. Eventually, after a while though, our clever friend Ada tosses us a rocket launcher in Resident Evil style and we finish him off. After doing this, she then betrays us to get the virus sample and then dives off a cliff and escapes on a helicopter.
Don't worry. I'll take good care of it.
Ada!
Gotta go. If I were you, I'd get off this island too.
Of course, before she goes, she sets off a timer for a bomb that will destroy the whole island, and all she leaves us with are some keys to the jet skis.
Very cute.
We run back to Ashley and get on the jet skis. We ride out of the collapsing cave until we finally make it out and away from the island.
Ashley! Ashley!
And after our long journey, we finally did it. Of course, Ashley then tries to seduce Leon and he refuses because his eyes are only for Ada. The game then ends with us riding into the sunset and fade to black.
Come on. Let's go home.
Sounds like a great idea. Mission accomplished. Right, Leon?
Not quite. I still have to get you home safe.
So, after you take me back to my place, how about we do some, overtime?
Sorry.
Somehow I knew you'd say that, but it doesn't hurt to ask, you know? So, who was that woman anyway?
Why do you ask?
Come on, tell me.
She's like a part of me I can't let go. Let's leave it at that.
And after that, we get one more scene from Leon.
Hunnigan, is that you?
Finally, the line's jack free.
Hey, Hunnigan, no glasses.
Forget the glasses. What's the status of the mission?
I've rescued the subject. We're returning home.
You did it, Leon.
Thanks. You know, you're kind of cute without those glasses. Give me your number when I get back.
May I remind you that you're still on duty.
Story of my life.
And that's the main story of Resident Evil 4. So, how does the story portion of Resident Evil 4 stand up? Personally, I think it's an amazing masterpiece. Yes, it has flaws, but these are easily overlooked and don't interfere with the game itself. Part of the flaws would be the super cheesy dialogue of the game. This may detract some people from the story, but personally I think that Leon's goofball dialogue helps the story. If you think about it, with all the crazy things that happen, if the story was 100% serious with everything all the time, it would kind of be depressing. Those moments when you could just sit around and joke with Leon really help to alleviate the stress of what is going on. Along with that, the story is extremely well paced. You basically go through this game scene after scene like a speeding bullet, and all the rooms and moments are put there for a reason, and there isn't much meaningless meandering going on to detract you from the game itself. One thing that I think can be improved upon, and we will see if they do it in the remake, is bringing out the background of all the events. In RE4, they tell you a lot of the background story through the notes that you find, but if you don't actually spend your time reading them, you won't get the total picture of the events that are happening. Now, it will still be enjoyable and fun, but if this was more in the forefront, it would make the game even better. Overall though, when it comes to the story, it's amazing and definitely holds up. And I don't think that's just the nostalgia talking. But a game isn't just the story that takes place. You also need good gameplay to accompany that story. So how does Resident Evil 4 stack up when it comes to gameplay? Well, let's jump into the game and find out. Okay, so after that brief story explanation, let's jump right into the gameplay of Resident Evil 4. The first most significant thing to mention with the gameplay is that the game is in third person over the shoulder view. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but at the time Resident Evil 4 was one of the very first third person shooters and actually helped to innovate and expand the genre. You can really feel its influence when you play games like Gears of War, Dead Space, and even more modern games such as Last of Us. Now, of course, there were already third-person games that existed, but most of them were platformers, and they also required you to move the camera independently from the player's body. Without Resident Evil 4, the third-person shooter genre wouldn't be where it is today. Now that being said, how does it stand up? Overall, there is a bit of getting used to when it comes to playing the game. The game has what is known as tank controls. So when you want to shoot or knife something, you must first aim down your sights in the form of a laser, and then press the trigger. This whole time you are aiming, however, you cannot move. This is probably people's biggest complaint when it comes to playing Resident Evil 4 for the first time. And some would say it is a valid complaint, but I will explain why I do not think it is valid. The reason I think it is not a valid complaint is because of how the gameplay of Resident Evil 4 works. Part of the magic of the game is the tension of these overwhelming odds and your limited ability to deal with them. Another reason is because the game is designed carefully around your movement. For example, if you turn your back in the game, the enemies behind you will start moving faster towards you. Versus, if you stay facing the enemy, they will go at a slower pace, giving you time to attack them. This attention to detail by the developers is intentional, and it makes all encounters tense and suspenseful. And also, for those of you who are complaining about the movement, you get used to it after about an hour, to be honest, and you won't even think twice after that point. Along with the movement though, Resident Evil 4 does an amazing job of what I call intentional damage. What I mean by this is where you aim on an enemy is important. Obviously, we all know in shooters that going for the head will do more damage, but Resident Evil 4 really makes you think about where you want to shoot the enemy. For example, if you shoot them in the knees, they can either fall over where you can then stab them multiple times while on the ground, or they will fall to their knees where you get a brief moment to run up and kick them or suplex them. Or if the enemy is carrying something, you can shoot their hand and they will drop it. And if it's TNT, you shoot their hand and it will explode. And even with its headshots, if you shoot their head, it can either stun them, or their head explodes, bringing out a Las Plagas, which makes you really think twice if you should really be shooting their head or not. All of these things show the amazing intentional damage you can do to enemies in Resident Evil 4. And there are many more. Since we're on the topic of shooting though, let's go ahead and talk about how you can choose to equip yourself in the game. When playing as Leon, you get a few base weapons, and you can then expand upon those weapons by either upgrading them or selling them and replacing them with stronger variants. In terms of your base weapons, you have your handgun, magnum, shotgun, TMP, and sniper. All of these have their own variants you can buy, and the Red 9 is of course the best of the handguns, and if you argue, I'm sorry, you're just wrong. There are also other weapons that can be used throughout the game. For my explosive friends, there's the handy dandy rocket launcher, which will help you one-shot any boss you encounter. You have the mine launcher, which I never really use. There is also special weapons depending what version of the game you play, such as the Chicago typewriter and the electric gun thingy. All of these beautiful killing machines make up the insane arsenal that you can play with as Leon. Oh, not to mention you also have access to grenades, and the most deadly of all, eggs. Now, whenever you get a weapon, if you visit the friendly merchant, you can upgrade your weapons with what is called pesetas. I think I said that right, I don't know. And if you fully upgrade guns, sometimes they have special effects. For example, This pistol can shoot through multiple enemies at once, or you get one that gets 10 times the headshot damage, or you never have to reload again with the TMP. Now to do these upgrades you gotta fork out some cash, and how does one obtain said cash? Well, you can get the money by killing enemies, breaking barrels, and finding treasures. If you see a painting, a bird's nest, a funny looking box, you bet your sweet booty you better be breaking and investigating it. For certain items you can also piece them together with other items to make them more valuable, so sometimes it's a good thing to hoard around all your junk. However, when you're ready to admit you are a hoarder, you must take a trip down to the merchant and he will satisfy your needs. Since we were talking about treasure though, this leads me to the next thing I wanted to mention, which is exploration. Resident Evil 4 is pretty straightforward for the most part with no exploration needed. All exploration in the game is purely for your own satisfaction. If you want to buy a treasure map and then go back and find all of the items to sell, you can do that. If you don't want to do that, then don't. The nice thing about the game is the exploration will only award you for what you do, and it will never feel like a waste. You want to know what does feel like a waste though? These stupid firing range games. I guess they aren't really a waste because you get money, but aside from that, you only get these stupid bottle caps that talk. That's literally all they do. Anyways, there is more to explore than just for treasures. For example, there's also a little medallion puzzle in the village that gets you a free pistol. Or you can also get a free magnum from exploring with Ashley. But the important part is none of this is necessary, and it is all based off you doing the exploration. Enough with exploration though, let's get into one of people's biggest complaints about Resident Evil 4. Ashley. So, for multiple parts of the game you are going to be required to do escort missions with Ashley. You are going to have to defend her, carry her, catch her, do her nails, wipe her ass, and feed her too. Now, obviously I'm exaggerating, but many people find these Ashley parts difficult. Not only is she following you and screaming for help every 2 seconds, but you also have to make sure she doesn't get hit or kidnapped, otherwise you lose. Now, to be honest, once you know how the game works, it's not that bad and you can really circumvent a lot of this. For example, there are many parts where there are literal dumpsters you can hide her in so that you don't need to worry about her during the fight. Along with that, I find sprinting in a long direction and then turning around to make sure she's behind you at all times is also helpful. But most of all, if you want to get the full experience with Ashley, make sure to look up her skirt.
Oh, you pervert!
Just kidding, don't do that, that's creepy. Yeah, I'm looking at you, you perv. Anyways, that's basically it for the most part with Ashley. You also have a small moment where you play as her, but it's really just a puzzle piece solving moment in the game. Which leads me into the other thing that the game does, puzzles. Now personally, I hate puzzles. Therefore the ones in RE4 are nice because they are made for simpletons. Well, except for the stupid Ashley one. I hated this one, but other than that all the puzzles are straightforward and simple to solve. Some are required while others just give you bonuses and goodies. Now, aside from the puzzles, there is one thing that RE4 is known for. QuickTime events. Now a lot of Resident Evil traditionalists probably hate these because Resident Evil 4 made QuickTime events so famous that they decided to overdo them with the next 2 games, and those are widely known as the worst games in the franchise. In terms of RE4 though, they are well placed, fun, and never too in your face. Yes, some of them are action movie cheesy like the James Bond laser scene or the Indiana Jones dodging a boulder, but that's part of what makes this game special. Now for the most part, that's basically it when it comes to the gameplay. The only other thing to really mention is the post-game content. Yes, post-game content, not DLC. Not those type of games where you have day 1 DLC, where that should definitely be part of the actual game, but it's not included. Anyways, the first major post-game content that you can do is Separate Ways. This is where you take control of Ada and play her storyline throughout Resident Evil 4 to get her perspective. Now for Separate Ways, that can be a whole different video in itself, so if you guys want to talk about that or hear about it, feel free to let me know and I'll be happy to make something. But overall, I love what it does and how it fleshes out the background of the game. The other post-game content you can do is Mercenaries. This is a little arcade mode where you have to get points from killing and surviving for a certain amount of time. The super fun part about this is the ability to play as different characters, including Krauser, who has a freaking bow and a giant ass arm. It's a fun mini game, and if you were like me and only got 1 game a year as a kid, then you spent a lot of time unlocking all the maps and characters. What other than Mercenaries, the last thing you could do is New Game Plus. This is where you restart the game with all your current weapons, but you can also gain access to many new weapons and costumes, my favorite being the gangster outfit. But overall, that's basically Resident Evil 4 when it comes to gameplay and story. So, let's jump to the final verdict. So, does Resident Evil 4 stand up to the test of time, or are we blinded by nostalgia? Well, if you couldn't guess what I'm going to say, it definitely stands up to the test of time. The story is concise, exciting, scary, and fun, and if its biggest complaint is that it's sometimes a little bit cheesy, I don't really think that's a problem. I think it actually helps to bring charm to the game. In terms of gameplay, it may take a second to get used to, but once you do, it's very rewarding, and you could go very in-depth with it as well. Overall though, to this day, Resident Evil 4 stands up to its name, and it's a game that I would recommend to all gamers of any type, and even non-gamers if they wanted to get into something. So, what do you think overall when it comes to Resident Evil 4? Are you interested in playing it now, or have you already played it and either loved it or hated it? Feel free to let me know in the comments below, and if you have any other suggestions on video games you'd like me to review, I'll go ahead and take those suggestions happily. Other than that though, if you could leave a like and subscribe, that'd be greatly appreciated. I really appreciate your time for watching and all the support, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.